It started with a wrong number 1 that would change 2 lives forever. The winter wind howled through the cracked window of a small apartment on Chicago's South Side. Inside, the air was thick with the sound of a baby crying, sharp, piercing, desperate. Sarah Park pressed her hand to her chest, as if to keep her heart from breaking. The old radiator sputtered and hissed, but gave no warmth. Her breath came out in thin clouds as she rocked the tiny bundle in her arms. "Shh, Noah, Mama's here," she whispered, though the baby's cries only grew louder. The fridge was empty. The last can of baby formula was gone 2 nights ago. She'd tried everything, worked double shifts, skipped meals borrowed from neighbors who barely had enough themselves. Her paycheck from the cleaning job at Walker Enterprises wasn't due for another week, and tonight she'd run out of time. She looked down at Noah. His cheeks flushed red from crying, his small fists opening and closing like he was reaching for something the world refused to give him. Sarah's vision blurred. Tears burned her eyes. She picked up her phone with trembling hands. Her fingers hovered above the screen as she scrolled through old contacts until one name stopped her cold: Ryan Carter. The man who had vanished the moment she told him she was pregnant. The man who never answered a single call since. Every part of her screamed not to do it. But Noah's cries cut through that pride like glass. So she started typing. "Ryan, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I don't have a choice. Noah's crying from hunger. I just need $50 for baby formula. I'll pay you back as soon as I get my check. Please. It's not for me. It's for your son." Her thumb hovered over the send button for a long, trembling second, and then she pressed it. A moment of silence, then panic. Her eyes darted to the screen, and her stomach dropped. The number. It wasn't Ryan's. She'd mistyped 1 digit. "Oh God, no," she whispered. She tried to delete it, but the 2 blue check marks appeared almost instantly. Seen. Her pulse spiked. Maybe the person wouldn't answer. Maybe they'd just ignore it. Maybe. Her phone buzzed. "I think you sent this to the wrong number." Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. Her thumbs flew over the screen. "I'm so sorry. Please ignore that. It was a mistake." She pressed send, praying that would end it. But another message arrived seconds later. "Do you really need formula for your baby?" Her breath caught. She looked at Noah, still whimpering softly, his little lips trembling. "It's fine. Please don't worry. I'll figure it out. I'm sorry for bothering you." She hit send and locked the phone, pressing it against her chest. Shame, exhaustion, and fear tangled inside her. She didn't want pity. She just wanted to survive. Then one more buzz. "Give me your address. I'll bring the formula myself." Her first instinct was disbelief. Then came fear. Who was this? Some stranger, a scammer, a joke. "No, please, you don't have to. I can't accept that. It was a mistake. Send me your address. Now." The message was short, firm, commanding. The kind of tone people used when they expected to be obeyed. Her pride screamed no. But Noah cried again, louder this time, his voice hoarse from hunger. The sound tore something inside her. Slowly, she typed her address and hit send. 15 minutes later, a sleek black Tesla stopped in front of her worn-down brick building. It didn't belong there. Not in this part of Chicago, not on this street where the snow turned gray from exhaust, and hope was a luxury. From the car stepped a tall man in a charcoal overcoat. His posture was straight, confident. 2 men in dark suits followed him, carrying bags. Sarah's breath hitched. Her reflection in the cracked window looked like a ghost. Her knees shook as she walked to the door. The doorbell rang, a deep, resonant sound that didn't fit this place. She opened the door just a little, her voice barely a whisper. "You're Richard Walker." His voice was calm, deep, steady. His eyes ice blue met hers, and something flickered there. Recognition, Eddie, no. Something else. She blinked in disbelief. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. Richard Walker, the billionaire CEO of Walker Enterprises, the man whose company's logo shone from the tallest glass tower downtown. Her company, the one whose floors she scrubbed every night after everyone went home. He held up the bags. "I brought milk, diapers, some clothes. Thought these might help." Sarah stood frozen, unable to speak. She took the bags in silence, her fingers brushing his gloved hand for a second, cold against warm. I don't know what to say." "Say thank you," he replied gently, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. Noah's cries echoed from the back room. Richard glanced past her into the small apartment, bare walls, a worn couch, a makeshift crib made from an old laundry basket lined with blankets. His expression softened. "May I come in?" For a second, she hesitated. Letting a billionaire into her world felt like stepping into a dream she didn't belong to. But something about his tone, quiet, sincere, made her nod. "Yes, please." He stepped inside, the faint scent of his cologne, clean, crisp, expensive, cutting through the musty air. He looked around without judgment, only curiosity, maybe even a trace of sadness. "You work at Walker Enterprises?" he asked, his gaze landing on the uniform hanging near the door. "Yes, 2 weeks now. Night shift." His eyebrows lifted. "That's quite a coincidence." He gave a small, thoughtful nod. "Well, I suppose I should know my employees better." She laughed nervously. "There are thousands of us, sir. I'm just one of the invisible ones." He studied her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Invisible. Not anymore. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was Noah's soft breathing as he finally slept, full and calm. Richard glanced at the baby, his jaw tightening slightly. "He looks like a fighter," he said quietly. Sarah's throat tightened. "He has to be." Richard turned back to her. "Sarah, I'd like to offer you something. Not charity, an opportunity. You're smart, organized, and clearly stronger than most people I've met. I want you to stop working as a janitor and come work directly for me as my personal assistant." The words didn't register at first. Her brain refused to process them. What? He repeated it slower this time, his gaze steady. "Work for me. In my office. A real position. A real salary. Health insurance, childcare benefits. You'll have stability, and your son will have what he deserves." Her heart raced. "Mr. Walker, I can't. I'm not qualified." "Yes, you are." He cut in gently. "I can teach skill. I can't teach heart. And you have plenty of that." She wanted to say no, to retreat into the safety of disbelief. But she looked at Noah sleeping peacefully, and something inside her broke open. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." Richard smiled, faint, but real. "Good. Be at the main office tomorrow at 9. Top floor, room 28. Don't be late." He turned to leave, but before he reached the door, he looked back once more. "You have more potential than you think, Sarah. You just need someone to remind you." When the door closed behind him, silence filled the room again. Sarah sank onto the couch, clutching the baby bag to her chest. The scent of new baby formula, faint and sweet, filled the air. For the first time in months, she let herself cry, not from despair, but from something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Outside, snow kept falling over Chicago, soft, endless, like a promise. And somewhere in the city's tallest tower, Richard Walker stood by the window of his penthouse office, staring into the night. For reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman from the South Side and the baby with his mother's eyes. Sometimes fate doesn't knock. It texts you by mistake. If this story touched you, take a moment, share it, tell someone who needs a little hope tonight. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change an entire life. Morning came too soon. Chicago's skyline glimmered like silver glass under the weak sun, but Sarah barely noticed. She had been awake since dawn, her nerves buzzing, her stomach tied in knots. The memory of last night still felt unreal. Richard Walker showing up at her door, his voice calm, but commanding his kindness, unsettling. It couldn't be real, could it? Maybe it had been a dream born of exhaustion, but the bags of formula and diapers by the crib said otherwise. She stood in front of the cracked mirror, smoothing the wrinkles from her only white blouse. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean. The black slacks she wore were slightly too loose, the shoes scuffed but polished. She tied her hair back tightly, trying to look composed, professional, like someone who belonged in an office instead of behind a mop bucket. In the crib, Noah slept peacefully, his small chest rising and falling, his cheeks round and warm. For the first time in months, he wasn't crying from hunger. She touched his little hand gently and whispered, "Mommy's got this." The words trembled in the air, half prayer, half promise. By 8:30, she was already on the subway, surrounded by strangers in suits, clutching their coffee cups, scrolling through phones. No one looked at anyone. Sarah kept her gaze low, but her reflection in the window caught her off guard. A young woman with tired eyes, but something new behind them. Something like courage. When the train emerged above ground near the loop, the morning light hit the skyscrapers like fire. She stepped out, her heart pounding, as she stared up at the building that seemed to pierce the clouds, Walker Enterprises spelled in bold steel letters across the glass facade. Inside, everything gleamed: marble floors, glass elevators, people moving with purpose. The air smelled like espresso and ambition. She walked up to the front desk, forcing a smile. "Good morning, I'm Sarah Park. Mr. Walker asked me to meet him at 9. The receptionist, a sleek woman in a navy blazer, glanced up. Her polite smile faltered for just a second when she saw Sarah's clothes, but she quickly recovered, typing on her keyboard. "Yes, Miss Park. Top floor, room 28. Elevator number 3. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly. As the elevator rose, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall again. She straightened her shoulders. The higher she went, the more her stomach twisted. The 60th floor felt like another world, the air colder, quieter, the view outside a blur of snow and sky. She stopped in front of a dark wooden door with a brass plate "President Richard Walker." For a second, she almost turned back. But then his voice came from the other side. "Come in." She pushed the door open. Richard was standing by the window, his back to her, dressed in a tailored gray suit. Morning light haloed his profile as he turned, and for a moment, she forgot how to breathe. He smiled faintly. "Right on time. I like that." "I didn't want to be late," she said softly. "Good. Punctuality's a rare thing these days." He motioned to the chair opposite his desk. She sat carefully, clasping her hands in her lap to stop them from shaking. The room was vast, modern furniture, dark wood, framed photographs of Chicago at night. Everything about it felt expensive, deliberate, and painfully out of her league. Richard sat across from her, his gaze steady but not unkind. "First of all," he said, "I know yesterday was unusual. You probably have 100 questions." Sarah gave a nervous laugh. "A few thousand, maybe. Then I'll start with the most important. You don't owe me anything." You don't have to be afraid this is some sort of obligation. I wasn't. Yes, you were. His tone softened. But I meant what I said. You have potential, and I don't believe in wasting it. I want you to assist me directly. You'll be trained, paid properly, and treated as part of my team. Understand? She nodded slowly, still unsure if this was real. Why me, Mr. Walker? You don't even know me. He leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. Because I've seen hundreds of people with degrees, fancy resumes, perfect manners, and no soul behind their words. But you looked desperate, exhausted, and still managed to stand straight and thank me. That's strength. Her throat tightened. It didn't feel like strength last night. Then maybe that's what real strength looks like, he said simply. He handed her a sleek black tablet. Your first task, help me organize my schedule for the week. Don't worry about making mistakes. You'll learn as you go. Sarah took it carefully, staring at the glowing screen like it was a portal to another universe. The interface was complicated, endless meetings, project deadlines, investor calls. But she absorbed every detail, her fingers moving quickly. Richard watched her with quiet curiosity. There was something captivating about the way she focused, as if the rest of the world ceased to exist when she worked. He'd seen executives freeze under pressure, but not her. She adapted, fast. By lunchtime, she was exhausted, but exhilarated. She'd already learned how to manage his email queue filter calls and handle his internal memos. A few secretaries on the floor whispered when she walked by, surprised, skeptical, but Sarah ignored them. When she brought Richard his coffee, he smiled. No sugar. You remembered? I pay attention, she said. He looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. Yes, you do. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Richard met with department heads, while Sarah sat quietly in the corner taking notes. He spoke with calm authority, his words measured, precise. She saw how people looked at him, with respect, with fear. But when he glanced her way, his gaze softened almost imperceptibly. At 5, most employees left. The city lights began to bloom below the windows. Richard was still at his desk, scrolling through reports when Sarah hesitated at the door. Mr. Walker, I can stay if you need help finishing that. He looked up, surprised. It's your first day. You should go home. I don't mind. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded toward the chair beside him. All right then, let's finish it together. For the next hour, they worked side by side, their shoulders almost touching. She noticed the faint lines near his eyes when he concentrated, the way his hands moved, decisive, confident, yet oddly gentle. There was something human beneath the perfection of his suit, something tired and alone. When they finally closed the last file, he leaned back and sighed quietly. You're efficient, Miss Park, and fast. She smiled, faint but genuine. When you've cleaned 30 floors in one night, you learn to move quickly. He laughed softly, the sound low and unexpected. I suppose so. As he stood, she rose too. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for this chance. He shook his head. Don't thank me yet. I expect a lot from people I believe in. The words lingered between them, heavier than they should have been. In the elevator down, Sarah caught her reflection again. Same clothes, same tired eyes, but something inside her had shifted. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. That night, when she returned to her apartment, Noah was awake, cooing softly in Mrs. Margaret's arms. The older woman smiled. He's been good all day. You look different, dear. Sarah kissed her son's forehead, whispering, maybe today was the start of something new. Across the city, In a penthouse that overlooked the frozen lake, Richard Walker stood by the glass wall staring out into the dark. He tried to focus on the reports on his desk, the deals waiting for signatures, but his mind wandered back to the woman with trembling hands and eyes that held too much history. He told himself it was curiosity, responsibility, gratitude maybe, but deep down, something quieter whispered that it was none of those things. It was the beginning of something he couldn't quite name, and that terrified him more than he cared to admit. The third week at Walker Enterprises changed everything. By then, Sarah had learned to walk through the gleaming marble lobby without shrinking. The security guards greeted her by name. The receptionist who once eyed her clothes with quiet judgment now offered a polite smile each morning. But still, every time she stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor, the weight of where she was pressed down on her like a second skin. It wasn't just a job, it was an entirely different world. One of glass walls, whispered deals, and people who smiled without warmth. She'd seen assistants with designer heels click past her, their perfume filling the air like a declaration of power. She was still the outsider, the anomaly, the woman who came from nothing, suddenly sitting beside the most powerful man in the building. Richard Walker didn't seem to notice how the others looked at her, or maybe he did and simply didn't care. Most mornings he arrived before anyone else. He liked silence before chaos. Sarah had started doing the same, arriving half an hour earlier to prepare his schedule, sort his correspondence, and line up his coffee black, strong no sugar. By the time he entered, everything was in order, and their day began with quiet efficiency. He'd greet her with that measured tone of his calm, precise, never overfamiliar. "Morning, Miss Park. Good morning, Mr. Walker." Sometimes that was all. But every now and then, there was a flicker of something softer in his voice. Her desk sat just outside his glass office, close enough that she could hear his voice during calls, calm when others might shout, cold when he needed control. But when he spoke to her, even briefly, his tone shifted. It wasn't warmth exactly, but respect. A kind of stillness. One Thursday morning, as the city outside groaned under gray skies, Sarah was typing up a revised itinerary when his door opened. "Do you have a moment?" She looked up quickly. "Of course." He motioned for her to follow. "There's a client meeting at 11, and I'd like you to sit in." Her eyebrows lifted. "Me, but I'm not." "You'll take notes. Observe." His lips curved just slightly. "You might learn something about how this place really works." The conference room was a world of polished wood and glass, overlooking the frozen lake. Men in suits and women in tailored dresses filled the space with expensive laughter. Sarah stood quietly beside the wall, notebook in hand. Richard's presence commanded the room. He didn't raise his voice, didn't push. He simply was the center of gravity. Everyone else orbited around. When one of the executives from the rival company tried to corner him into an unfavorable deal, he leaned back in his chair and said with soft steel, "If I wanted to sell dignity for numbers, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair." There was silence, then quiet agreement. The meeting ended with handshakes and smiles that didn't reach the eyes. As they walked out, Sarah glanced at him. "You don't let people intimidate you, do you?" He gave a small laugh, rare and genuine. "I learned early that power isn't about how loud you speak. It's about how calm you stay when everyone else is losing control." Something in the way he said it made her wonder what kind of storms he'd weathered to learn that. That afternoon, the first crack in the smooth rhythm of her days appeared. As Sarah waited for an elevator, she overheard two senior assistants whispering behind her. "I still can't believe she's up here," one said. A janitor, working next to him, Maybe she's got connections. The other muttered, smirking. Sarah pretended not to hear. She stepped into the elevator, eyes forward, but their laughter followed her down the hall like a shadow. That night, she stayed late organizing the next day's documents. The office was empty except for her and the hum of the city beyond the windows. When she finally stood to leave, Richard's door opened. "You're still here," he said, voice low. "I wanted to make sure everything was ready for tomorrow." He leaned against the doorway, watching her for a moment. "You don't have to prove yourself every night, Sarah." She smiled, faintly tired. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I just can't afford to fail." His gaze softened. "You won't." He walked closer, placing a file on her desk. "These are for tomorrow's board review. Go home. Get some rest. You'll need it." As he turned to leave, she noticed the exhaustion on his face, the kind that no amount of money could erase. "Do you ever rest, Mr. Walker?" she asked gently. He paused, his hand on the doorframe. For a heartbeat, he looked almost startled by the question. "Not as often as I should," he admitted. Then more quietly, "Good night, Sarah." That weekend, Sarah took Noah to the park. The air was crisp sunlight glinting off patches of melting snow. She sat on a bench watching her son kick at the grass when her phone buzzed. It was an email from Richard. Subject: Monday agenda. "Thank you for your work this week. The board was impressed. I hope you're taking the weekend to breathe. RW." It wasn't much, just a line, but she read it 3 times, unable to hide the small, unguarded smile that spread across her face. Monday came, and the rhythm resumed, but something had shifted. Richard began involving her in more tasks, summarizing contracts, preparing reports, sitting in on meetings. He'd ask her opinion, sometimes casually, as if testing her insight. And every time she answered, she saw the faintest spark of approval in his eyes. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Richard loosened his tie and leaned against his desk. "You're surprisingly perceptive," he said. "You read people well." She shrugged lightly. "When you've spent years cleaning rooms after people leave, you learn a lot about what they're really like." That made him laugh quietly. That might be the most honest thing anyone said to me all week. She hesitated before speaking again. "Why do you do it?" He looked at her. "Do what work this hard, stay this late. You already have everything." For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said softly, "When you grow up with nothing, having everything doesn't feel like enough. You keep chasing something, maybe to prove you deserve it. Maybe because stopping means realizing you're still alone." The words hung between them, raw and unexpected. Sarah didn't know what to say, so she didn't. She simply looked at him, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between them began to blur. The formality of Mr. Walker softened. Sometimes she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Once, while showing her how to use the company's secure system, his hand brushed hers. It was an accident, barely a second, but it left a pulse in the air neither of them could ignore. That night, as she closed her laptop at home, Sarah caught her reflection in the window, the city glowing behind her. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. This version of herself stood taller, looked steadier, no longer weighed down by shame. But beneath that strength was something dangerous, something that felt like longing. Richard, in his penthouse office, couldn't shake the same feeling. He tried to bury it under work, under meetings and numbers. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, her hands moving over his desk, her quiet focus, her laugh that slipped through his walls without permission. He told himself it was admiration, gratitude, maybe even friendship. But he wasn't blind to the truth. The line between professionalism and something deeper was thinning, and one day soon it would break. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the kind that carried no warning, no storm on the horizon. Yet by nightfall, Sarah's world would crack open again. The day began like any other at Walker Enterprises. Meetings, calls, the quiet hum of computers beneath the glass ceiling. Sarah moved through her tasks with precision, answering messages, scheduling appointments, learning how to anticipate Richard's needs before he spoke them. There was rhythm now between them, something effortless, something almost dangerous in its comfort. At noon, she went downstairs to grab a coffee. The city outside was alive with the pulse of winter sunlight and the echo of street vendors shouting on Monroe Street. She was just leaving the cafe when a familiar voice froze her mid-step. Sarah. She turned slowly. The sound was one she'd hoped never to hear again. Ryan Carter stood on the corner, hands stuffed into his coat pockets, the same lopsided grin she used to find charming, now hollow brittle. His hair was longer, his eyes tired, and though the world around them had changed, his arrogance hadn't aged a day. For a second, her breath caught in her throat. "What are you doing here?" He took a step closer, smirking. "You're hard to find these days." "New job, huh? Fancy office downtown. You've upgraded." She stiffened. "Don't follow me, Ryan." "Relax," he said, raising his hands. "I just want to see my son." The word struck her like a slap. "You lost that right the day you walked out." His smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of resentment. "Don't act like you're perfect. You think working for some rich guy makes you better than me? I saw that Tesla parked outside your building last week. Let me guess your new boss." Sarah's heart pounded. "That's none of your business." Ryan leaned in, voice lowering. "Everything that touches my kid is my business. Maybe the court should hear about how cozy you are with your boss." Her hands clenched. "If you come near Noah, I'll call the police." He chuckled softly. "You wouldn't do that. You're not the type." His eyes flicked over her clothes, the badge clipped to her coat. "But you are the type who'd pay to make problems disappear." Sarah stared, stunned. "Are you trying to extort me?" He tilted his head. "Call it a trade. $5,000 and I stay out of your life and Noah's." She took a step back, her voice trembling. "You disgust me." But he only smiled, slipping his hands into his pockets again. "Think about it, sweetheart. You've got a nice setup now. Don't let it all fall apart." Then he walked away, whistling as if the past 4 years hadn't meant a thing. The sound haunted her all the way back to the office. By the time she reached the top floor, her legs felt heavy. She sank into her chair, trying to focus on the screen, but her mind replayed every word, every smirk. When Richard emerged from his office, he paused at the sight of her face. "Sarah." She looked up, startled. "Oh, sorry, I was just—" "You're pale," he said, stepping closer. "What happened?" "Nothing," she lied quickly. "I just didn't sleep well." He didn't believe her. She could tell by the way his eyes narrowed, scanning her expression like he was reading a page. "Don't do that," he said quietly. "Do what hide." His tone softened. "Talk to me." She hesitated. Something in his voice, calm but insistent, broke through her defenses. She took a slow breath. "I ran into someone. My son's father." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And he wants money. He said he'll disappear if I pay him." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the city below. Then Richard's voice dropped cold and controlled. "What's his name?" She blinked. "You don't have to." "I asked his name." "Sarah." Ryan Carter, she whispered. Richard's expression darkened, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Did he threaten you? She swallowed hard. Not directly, but I'm scared, Richard. He knows where I live. He turned away for a moment, his hand tightening around the edge of his desk. When he faced her again, the restraint in his voice barely masked something deeper fury. You're not going back there tonight. What, you'll stay in one of the company apartments near the Loop. I'll have security drive you and your son. Richard. That's too much. It's not a request, he said firmly. Then softer. Please, let me help. There was no commanding edge in his eyes now, only quiet concern. The kind that left her defenseless. She nodded. Okay. That night, a black SUV waited outside her building. Noah slept in her arms as she climbed inside. The city lights blurred past the window, neon reflections streaking across the glass, like ghosts of everything she was leaving behind. The company apartment was modern and spotless, with wide windows overlooking the city. When the driver left, silence filled the space. Sarah tucked Noah into the crib they'd prepared and stood at the window, staring out at the skyline. Somewhere beyond those towers, Richard was still in his office, probably working, probably pretending the world didn't weigh on him. Her phone buzzed. A text. RW. Let me know when you're settled. Sarah, we're here. Thank you for everything. RW. You don't have to thank me. You deserve safety, Sarah. She read the words twice, feeling something stir in her chest that had nothing to do with gratitude. The next morning when she arrived at work, Richard was already in his office. He didn't bring up Ryan, and she was grateful. But the air between them had changed, charged with something unsaid. Midday, during a strategy meeting, she caught him glancing at her. Once, then again, as if checking that she was still there, still safe. Their eyes met, and for a fraction of a second, the rest of the room disappeared. That evening, after the office emptied, he asked her to stay. Just a quick review, he said, but the tone carried more weight than the words. They sat side by side, going through documents. His sleeve brushed her hand once, barely a touch, yet it sent a ripple through her body. When she finally looked up, he was already watching her. Thank you, she murmured. For what? For caring. He exhaled slowly, looking away. Don't thank me for that either. It's not something I can help. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, electric, like the air before lightning. A sudden knock broke it. The door opened, and David Chen, Richard's head of security, stepped in. Sorry to interrupt, sir. We caught someone loitering near the Loop apartments. A man matching the description you gave. Sarah froze. Where is he now? Richard's voice turned to steel. CPD has him. He's being questioned. Good. Keep me updated. David left, closing the door behind him. The silence returned sharper this time. Sarah's pulse pounded. He really came back, she whispered. Richard stood slowly, walking toward her. You're safe. He won't get near you or Noah again. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. He stopped a step away. Because someone should have protected you a long time ago. Something broke inside her. Then, not fear, but the fragile wall she'd built around her heart. Before she could think, she reached out, fingers brushing his sleeve. He didn't move away. For a moment, the city outside disappeared. It was just the two of them. The hum of their breath, the faint buzz of electricity in the air, the ache of something they both knew they shouldn't want. But Richard stepped back, first, his eyes clouded with restraint. Go home, Sarah, he said quietly. Get some rest. She hesitated, then nodded. Good night, Richard. He watched her leave his reflection in the glass window, flickering against the night skyline. When the elevator doors closed behind her, he pressed his palms to the cold glass and whispered to no one, "I can't protect her if I cross that line." The following morning, the Chicago skyline bled into a hazy gold as the first light crawled over the lake. Inside the Walker Enterprises penthouse, Richard stood by the window, coffee untouched, his reflection fractured against the glass. He hadn't slept much, not after what happened the night before. The image of Sarah, terrified but defiant, lingered in his mind like a ghost he couldn't let go of. He'd dealt with crises before. Corporate takeovers, multi-million-dollar lawsuits, hostile investors. But none of those had made his pulse race the way it did when she was near danger. This wasn't business. This was something far more personal, something he was trying and failing to control. Down on the street, Sarah walked briskly toward the building, the cold wind biting at her cheeks. Her coat was buttoned tight, her steps steady, but her mind was anything but calm. She hadn't stopped replaying the moment security caught Ryan near her apartment. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was exhaustion, a bone-deep fatigue from always waiting for the next disaster to happen. Yet beneath the anxiety, there was something else, the lingering warmth of Richard's voice telling her, "You deserve safety." When she entered the office, Richard was already in a meeting with the legal department. Through the glass walls, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the sharp lines of his jaw as he listened to his team discuss a sudden financial discrepancy that had appeared in one of the company's accounts. She caught snippets: unexplained transfers, internal authorization, possible fraud. A chill ran down her spine. An hour later, when the meeting ended, Richard called her in. His voice was low-controlled, but there was a fire behind it. "Sarah, I need you to go through these reports, every transaction from the last quarter. Look for inconsistencies, even small ones." She nodded, pulling the files toward her. "You think someone's stealing? I think someone's trying to bury something," he said grimly. "And whoever it is, they're good." For the next few hours, the two of them worked side by side, scanning columns of numbers, tracing invoices, cross-checking accounts. It wasn't glamorous work. It was methodical, exhausting. But Sarah's sharp eye caught things the accountants had missed. Tiny discrepancies, dates that didn't align, supplier names that didn't exist. At one point, she looked up and said softly, "Richard, this vendor, Carter Logistics, it doesn't match any of our registered partners." The pen in his hand stopped mid-motion. "What did you say?" "Carter Logistics," she repeated. "It's been paid 4 times in the past 6 months. Small amounts less than $10,000 each, but the pattern's strange. And it's always approved under the same authorization code." He took the document from her, his expression darkening as he read. "This code belongs to William Carter, my CFO." Sarah's stomach tightened. "Carter?" "Yes," Richard said quietly, setting the paper down. "He's also my former business partner." Something in his tone made her look closer. "Former. We've been friends since college," he admitted, leaning back. "He helped me build this company from nothing. But lately, I've had doubts. There were signs, whispers about side deals. I ignored them." He exhaled, frustrated. "That was a mistake." Sarah hesitated. "You think he might be connected to Ryan?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Richard didn't answer immediately. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the papers, and for the first time, she saw a shadow of something deeper: betrayal. Maybe. And if he is, we're not just dealing with theft anymore. We're dealing with blackmail. That night, after the offices emptied and the lights dimmed, Sarah stayed behind, scanning more records. The glow from her monitor reflected in her tired eyes. She was halfway through another spreadsheet when she felt someone watching her. She turned and found Richard standing at the doorway, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be here this late," he said. "Neither should you," she replied with a faint smile. He walked closer, the faint scent of cedar and cologne following him. "You've done enough for today. Go home, Sarah." She hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Richard, if this really is what it looks like, you could lose everything." "I've lost worse," he said quietly. "Money, power, they come and go. But trust." He paused, eyes darkening. "When someone breaks that, it's hard to come back from it." Sarah studied him, the lines of exhaustion carved into his face, the rare vulnerability in his voice. "You're not alone in this." He met her gaze, and for a heartbeat, the air shifted between them, charged, fragile, dangerously close to something they both understood but couldn't name. The next morning, the company was buzzing. News had leaked an anonymous report accusing Richard of authorizing fraudulent payments himself. The board was calling for an internal investigation. Sarah watched the chaos unfold from her desk as whispers rippled through the hallways. By noon, the story had already reached the media. When she entered Richard's office, he was pacing, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what the headlines say," he snapped. "Get my statement out by 5. No comment until I review it." He hung up, exhaling sharply. "They're framing me." She stepped closer. "Richard, I think I can help." "How?" She took a deep breath. "I checked the system logs. The authorization code used for those payments was cloned. The access timestamps don't match your login sessions." He stared at her, hope flickering for the first time in hours. "You're saying they forged my credentials?" "Yes, and whoever did it had high-level clearance." Richard moved around the desk, standing close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "Sarah, do you realize what you've just done? You may have saved my name." She flushed slightly. "I'm just doing my job." "No," he said softly. "You're doing far more than that." The air grew still. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. His hand brushed hers accidentally, maybe, but neither pulled away. Then his phone buzzed again, shattering the moment. He answered, his tone shifting instantly. "Walker." A pause. Then his face hardened. "What do you mean? She's been contacted." Sarah froze. "What happened?" He lowered the phone slowly, his voice low and dangerous. "Ryan called the front desk this morning. He asked for you by name." Her heart dropped. How does he even know where I work? Richard's jaw tightened. "Because someone told him. And I'm starting to think William isn't just stealing from me. He's feeding information to the wrong people." The walls of the office seemed to close in. Sarah's hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to stand tall. "What do we do?" He looked at her, his expression steady despite the storm brewing beneath. "We find proof. We expose them both. But from now on, you don't go anywhere alone. Not until this is over." Outside, the wind howled across the skyscrapers, bending the streetlights until they flickered like dying stars. Inside, two people, one powerful, one ordinary, found themselves bound by more than circumstance. For Sarah, it was survival. For Richard, it was something deeper, a realization that somewhere between the danger, the lies, and the fragile calm of her presence, he had found something he couldn't afford to lose. And though neither said it aloud, both understood one truth. The fight was no longer just about the company. It was about loyalty, love, and the kind of trust that could either save them or destroy them completely. Rain came to Chicago that night without warning. The kind that falls in silver sheets, washing the streets in reflections of headlights and neon. Inside the penthouse, Richard stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline mirrored in his glass of whiskey. Each sip burned slow, grounding him in the silence that had followed the storm of the past few days. His empire, the company he had built from nothing, was now hanging by a thread, its reputation poisoned by whispers, forged numbers, and betrayal. And through it all, the only person he trusted sat just a few rooms away, working late, as always. Sarah's soft hum reached him before he saw her. She was sitting on the couch, her laptop open, documents scattered across the table. The faint light from the lamp brushed against her dark skin, warm and glowing against the storm-gray night. She didn't notice him at first, lost in the rhythm of typing, her brows drawn in focus. "You should rest," Richard said quietly, his voice breaking the hush. She looked up, startled, then smiled faintly. "I could say the same to you." He crossed the room and set the glass down beside her. "You've done more than enough today. You've been working for 12 hours straight." Her eyes softened, but her tone carried quiet defiance. "If I stop now, my mind will just go in circles. At least this makes me feel like I'm helping." "You've already helped," he said, his voice gentler now. "You found the key evidence that links the forged transfers to William. The FBI has enough to start a formal investigation. It's only a matter of time." Sarah leaned back, exhaling. "Time feels dangerous lately." Richard looked at her, really looked. There was something about the way she carried her fear. She never let it show as weakness. It came out as focus, as determination, as grace under fire. He envied that strength. The silence between them stretched, filled with the sound of rain tapping the windows. Then, unexpectedly, she asked, "Do you ever wonder if it's worth it? All of this? The power, the money, the endless fights?" He tilted his head, surprised. "Every day," he admitted. "But I've never had the luxury of stopping." "Luxury?" she echoed, raising an eyebrow. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "When you grow up with nothing, success becomes survival. You stop chasing dreams and start running from failure." Sarah's expression softened. "You sound like someone who's tired of running." He looked down at the city lights below his reflection, shimmering beside hers. "Maybe I am." They sat like that for a long time, two people from different worlds, sharing the same quiet storm. Then her phone buzzed on the table. The sound made her flinch. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and froze. Richard noticed instantly. "Who is it?" Her lips parted, but no words came. The message glared back from an unknown number. "Did you really think I'd disappear that easily? You and your new boyfriend look good together on the news." Her breath caught. "It's him," she whispered. Richard took the phone, his expression darkening as he read. The color drained from his face, replaced by a cold fury. "Ryan." More messages appeared, one after another. "Tell your boss. I've got something he'll want to see. Meet me tomorrow, or I'll show everyone what you've both been hiding." Sarah's voice trembled. "What is he talking about?" Richard's jaw tightened. He's bluffing. But deep down, he wasn't sure. There were too many angles, too many ways William and Ryan could twist the truth. If Ryan had photos, if he'd been following them, it could destroy not just the investigation, but her life too. He turned to her, eyes burning with resolve. "You're not meeting him. I'll handle it." "No," she said sharply. "He's after me. If I hide behind you, he'll just keep coming. I can't live like that." "Sarah." "I'm not asking," she cut in. "You taught me not to run from fear. Let me face it." For a moment he stared at her, caught between admiration and frustration. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "If you're meeting him, I'm going with you. No arguments." Her gaze softened. "I wasn't planning to argue." The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the glass, like a heartbeat. The next morning, the air carried the damp scent of the storm. They met Ryan in a diner on the city's south side, a quiet, forgotten place where the smell of burnt coffee and old grease hung in the air. Sarah sat at the booth first, her hands clasped in her lap. Richard sat across from her, silent, watchful. Ryan arrived late, his smirk already in place. "Well, this is cozy," he drawled, sliding into the seat across from them. The boss himself. "Didn't think I'd get such an audience." Richard's voice was calm but cold. "You have 30 seconds to explain why you're here." Ryan chuckled, tapping the table with his finger. "You really don't get it, do you? You two made this too easy. I've got pictures. You and her late nights, cozy dinners, private meetings. You think the press won't eat that up? CEO saves his janitor, falls in love, promotes her overnight. Sounds like a scandal to me." Sarah's heart pounded. "You followed me?" Ryan leaned back, shrugging. "Followed, investigated, same thing. You can thank your CFO for the tip. He's got quite the network." Richard's composure cracked for a second, the flicker of realization flashing in his eyes. "William." Ryan grinned. "Bingo." Richard leaned forward, his tone deadly calm. "How much? 10 million, Ryan said, without hesitation. "Split it however you want. You pay and I disappear. Forever." Sarah's voice shook. "You're out of your mind." Ryan smirked. "Maybe, but I'm also the only one holding all the cards." Richard stared at him, silent for a long time. Then quietly he said, "No, you're holding a few. And you've just lit it." Ryan frowned. "What?" Before he could finish, the sound of sirens cut through the air outside. In seconds, 2 unmarked cars pulled up to the curb. FBI agents entered the diner, badges raised. Ryan Carter, one of them, called. "You're under arrest for blackmail, harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud." Ryan's smirk vanished. "What the hell is this?" Sarah sat frozen as the agents cuffed him. Richard didn't look away, his expression unreadable. "You should have known," he said quietly. "The moment you threatened her, I made sure every word you sent was forwarded to federal investigators. Enjoy prison." Ryan twisted in anger as they dragged him out. "You think this is over? William's not done. He's coming for you both." His voice echoed through the diner until it was swallowed by the sirens fading down the street. Sarah sat in silence, her hands trembling. "You knew this would happen," she whispered. Richard finally exhaled, the weight of the past weeks heavy on his shoulders. "I hoped it would," he said softly, "but it doesn't feel like winning." She looked at him, really looked. The lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the quiet strength beneath the tension. "You protected me again," she murmured. He shook his head. "You protected us. You stood your ground." The words hung between them, heavier than the rain, more fragile than hope. When they left the diner, the storm had passed. The city glistened under pale sunlight, and for a fleeting moment, it almost felt like peace. But deep down, both of them knew this wasn't the end. William was still out there somewhere, in the glass towers and shadows of the city, watching, waiting. And though neither said it, the truth was clear. The next storm would not just test their loyalty, it would test their hearts. The city was unnervingly quiet that night, the kind of silence that comes only after chaos, when the sirens fade and the rain has rinsed away every trace of what came before. But for Richard Walker, there was no such thing as calm anymore. The storm had simply gone underground. He stood in the corner of his office, the blinds drawn halfway, the skyline glittering in the distance like 1,000 secrets waiting to be told. Ryan was gone, locked away, silenced, but the name that still haunted him was William Carter, his former partner, his brother in all but blood, the man who had helped build Walker Enterprises, and then tried to burn it down from within. The FBI had enough to keep the investigation alive, but William was nowhere to be found. His accounts were frozen, his mansion empty. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. And Richard knew men like William didn't vanish. They waited. Down the hall, Sarah worked quietly in the glass-walled operations office. The dim light traced the curve of her face, the faint concentration in her eyes, as she organized the forensic reports from the financial audit. It had been 2 weeks since Ryan's arrest, but the tension had never really left her shoulders. She looked up when Richard appeared in the doorway. "You're still here," she said softly, though she already knew the answer. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "So are you." She smiled faintly, but her voice was tired. "I'm trying to prove I belong here." He stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Sarah, you don't have to prove anything. Not to me." Her lips parted, but before she could reply, a knock at the main door cut through the quiet. Richard frowned. "It's after midnight." The knock came again, louder this time. He exchanged a glance with Sarah, a flicker of unease passing between them. She set her files down while he moved toward the door. When he opened it, a delivery man stood there, rain still dripping from his cap. "Package for Mr. Walker." Richard took it, signed automatically, and shut the door. The box was small, too small to mean anything, and yet something about it made the hair on his arms rise. He set it on the table, cut the seal, and peeled back the flaps. Inside was a single flash drive and a folded note. No return address, no logo. Just one word scrawled in red ink: "Kiss me." Sarah's face drained of color. "It's him." Richard didn't answer. He plugged the drive into his laptop. A single video file appeared, titled "Insurance." He double-clicked. The footage opened to a dimly lit office, his office, their office. William sat in his chair, leaning back with an easy smirk, swirling a glass of scotch. "Well, Richard," the recording began, "if you're seeing this, congratulations. You found my little gift. I figured you might, after you threw me to the wolves. But don't worry, old friend. I'm not done with you yet. You see, every man in power has a weakness, and I found yours." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Her name is Sarah." Sarah's heart stopped. Richard's hands clenched into fists. William's voice continued, casual and venomous. "Did you really think no one would notice? The janitor turned executive assistant, the late nights. The stolen glances, the company will eat you alive when they find out. And when they do, I'll be there to watch." The video cut to black. Sarah took a step back, her pulse hammering. He's trying to destroy you, to destroy us." Richard exhaled slowly, fighting the rage that boiled beneath his skin. "He's bluffing. The board already knows about the investigation. They won't believe him." "Maybe not," she said quietly, "but the press will." He looked at her, then really looked. The fear behind her calm voice, the way her fingers trembled ever so slightly. It wasn't just his reputation at stake anymore. It was hers. By morning, the first leak had hit social media. Photos grainy but unmistakable of Richard and Sarah in the office, late at night, her hand brushing his shoulder, his gaze soft, in a way no CEO should ever look at an employee. The story spread like wildfire. CEO Richard Walker, caught in scandal, with assistant amid fraud investigation. Within hours, the board demanded an emergency meeting. Richard sat at the long mahogany table surrounded by faces that once smiled at him and now looked at him with suspicion. The chairman, a gray-haired man named Graham Pierce, leaned forward. "Richard, you've been an asset to this company for years, but this is different. The optics are catastrophic." Richard's voice was steady, but every word was a blade. "The story is fake. William Carter is behind it. He forged transactions, planted evidence, and now he's using fabricated rumors to destabilize us." Graham sighed. "Whether or not it's true doesn't matter right now. The shareholders are in a panic. We need to act." Richard's jaw tightened. "Act? How?" "Step down," Graham said quietly. "Temporarily. Until the investigation clears your name." The words hit him harder than he expected. Around the table, no one spoke. Not a single person defended him. When he walked out of the room, the walls seemed to close in. The empire he had built, the legacy he had poured his life into, was slipping through his fingers. Sarah was waiting for him outside the boardroom, anxiety etched into every line of her face. What happened? He didn't answer, just kept walking until they reached his office. Then he finally spoke, his voice hollow. "They've suspended me." Her heart sank. "Richard?" He turned to her, eyes dark but calm. "This isn't your fault." "Yes, it is," she whispered. "If I hadn't been here, if I hadn't sent that text months ago." "Don't," he said sharply, then softened. "Don't rewrite the past to punish yourself. You didn't ruin my life, Sarah. You saved it." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "What are you going to do now?" He glanced toward the window, the city stretching endlessly below. "Find him and finish this." That night, as the city lights shimmered through the rain, Sarah packed the last of her files into a box. The office felt different now, empty, stripped of warmth. She lingered by the desk, running her fingers across its smooth surface, remembering the laughter that had once filled the silence here. When she turned to leave, Richard was standing in the doorway. No tie, no pretense, just a man caught between fury and heartbreak. "You're leaving," he said quietly. "I think it's better this way," she replied, her voice steady though her chest ached. "If I stay, they'll use me against you." He stepped closer, each word weighted with unspoken emotion. They already did. The air between them was electric grief and longing woven together. She wanted to tell him everything she felt, everything she'd tried to bury under professionalism and fear. But instead she whispered, "I don't want to make this harder." He gave a small broken laugh. "Sarah, it was never easy." For a moment, neither moved. Then he reached out his fingers, brushing a loose strand of her hair, his touch barely there, but enough to make her tremble. "Where will you go?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "But maybe I need to figure out who I am without all this chaos." He nodded slowly, his throat tightening. "If you ever need anything, I know," she said softly. "You'll be there." And then she left. The sound of the elevator doors closing was quiet final. Richard stood there long after she was gone, the city roaring silently below. For the first time in years, he felt small, not as a CEO, not as a man of power, but as someone who had finally realized that love once found could be the one thing he couldn't control, couldn't save, and couldn't replace. But as the rain began again, washing the glass in streaks of silver, he made himself a promise. He would find William. He would clear her name. And somehow, when it was all over, he would bring her back. 3 months passed before Sarah saw him again. Chicago had moved on as if nothing had happened, snow melting into spring headlines, fading into new scandals, the city once more dressed in its restless rhythm. But for her, time had changed its pace. It no longer raced. It lingered suspended between the ache of what she had lost and the fragile hope of what might still be found. She had left Walker Enterprises the week after Richard's suspension, moving to a quiet suburb near Evanston, where Noah could sleep without sirens. She took a modest job at a community foundation, managing donation records and outreach programs. It was honest work, humble, even, but peaceful. Some nights, she still dreamt of him, of the way he'd looked at her across that office, filled with glass and secrets. She'd wake up in the dark with her heart racing, his name caught on her breath, and she'd remind herself that what they had was never meant to survive the world they came from. Then one morning, everything changed again. It started with a headline: William Carter arrested in federal fraud sting evidence clears Walker of wrongdoing. The article spread fast. His name restored the company's stock, soaring investors calling it a return to honor. Sarah sat at her kitchen table staring at the screen, her hand trembling around her coffee cup. He'd done it. Against all odds, Richard had kept his promise. She didn't know whether to smile or cry. Part of her wanted to reach out to send a single message: "I'm proud of you." But she didn't. Because what could she say after walking away? After leaving him standing in that empty hallway, with everything unspoken between them? That evening, when she picked Noah up from daycare, he was holding a small toy car, a sleek black model with silver stripes. "Mr. Walker gave it to me," he said cheerfully. Sarah froze. "What?" Her heart began to hammer. She turned and saw him standing by the gate, hands in his coat pockets, watching her with that same steady calm that had once unraveled her completely. Richard. He looked different, older somehow, more tired, but in his eyes was that same quiet certainty she remembered. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he smiled faintly. "Hey, Sarah." Her voice barely came out. "How did you find me?" He stepped closer, his tone soft. "I didn't have to." "You never really left my mind." Noah ran up to him, holding the toy proudly. "Thank you, Mr. Walker." Richard knelt, ruffling the boy's hair. "You're welcome, buddy. You take care of your mom for me." "Okay." Sarah's breath hitched. She wanted to tell him not to say things like that, to stop being kind, stop being the man she couldn't stop loving. But the words died somewhere in her throat. When Noah ran ahead toward the car, Richard looked back at her. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. They walked along the edge of the park, the city glowing gold in the distance. The wind off the lake carried the faint smell of rain and lilacs. "I heard about William," she said finally. He nodded. "The FBI caught him in Miami. Offshore accounts, forged identities, everything we suspected. They found a hidden archive of his correspondence with Ryan, too. That's how they linked the blackmail." Her chest tightened. "So it's over." He exhaled. "Legally, yes. But the fallout." He gave a weary smile. "You know how it works. People remember the scandal longer than the truth." She looked up at him. "Then why are you here, Richard? You could have started over anywhere. New York, London. Why come back?" His answer came quietly, simply. "Because this is where you are." For a heartbeat, the world stood still. The sound of the city faded. The wind caught in the branches above them. She turned toward him, her eyes wide with something between disbelief and longing. "Richard, don't. I need to say this." He interrupted, voice low but firm. "When you left, I thought it was the right thing. I told myself it would protect you. But every day after, I kept looking for your face, in every crowd, hearing your voice in every empty room. I built my life on control, Sarah. But you ruined that in the best possible way." Tears stung her eyes before she could stop them. "You don't have to say this." "I do," he said. "Because the truth is, I didn't fight to clear my name for the company. I did it for you, for us." She looked down, her voice trembling. There is no us, Richard. Not anymore. We're from different worlds. You know that. He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers, maybe. But I've learned something, Sarah. It's not the world that decides who we belong to. It's the heart. The simplicity of it undid her. Every wall she'd built since leaving him cracked open all at once. The fear, the guilt, the longing, it all rose to the surface. He reached out, brushing away a tear with the gentlest touch, like he was afraid she might vanish if he pushed too hard. I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness, he said. I came here to ask if you still feel what I feel. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. He smiled faintly. That's answer enough. The sun dipped lower, streaking the sky in hues of rose and gold. Noah's laughter echoed in the distance, chasing the shadows away. Sarah finally whispered, I never stopped, Richard. I tried to. God, I tried so hard. But every time I thought I'd moved on, something would remind me. Your voice, your cologne, the way you said my name like it mattered. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the weight of her words. When he opened them, there was peace there, quiet, steady, certain. He took her hand, fingers intertwining like they'd always belonged that way. Then let's stop running. She let out a shaky breath, a smile breaking through the tears. What now? He looked out over the lake, the city lights shimmering on the water. Now, he said, we build something that isn't made of power or fear, something real. Weeks passed, and for once peace didn't feel temporary. Richard returned to the company not as a man reclaiming his throne, but as someone who had learned humility through loss. He rebuilt what William had broken, not with arrogance, but with integrity. And he made sure Sarah's name was cleared publicly, giving her the recognition she deserved. But more than that, they rebuilt their lives quietly, dinners at home, late-night talks, while Noah slept, laughter that came easily again. Sometimes when they walked through Millennium Park on weekends, people would still whisper about the scandal, about the story that had nearly destroyed them. But neither of them cared anymore. They had faced worse. On one of those evenings, as the sky burned pink and the sound of jazz drifted from a nearby cafe, Noah tugged on Richard's sleeve. Are you gonna marry Mommy? Sarah froze, startled, but Richard only smiled, looking down at the boy. What do you think? Noah grinned. I think you already did. You just forgot to tell her. Sarah laughed, really laughed, the kind she hadn't felt in years, and in that moment, all the heaviness that once shadowed them lifted. Later, when they stood at the edge of the lake, Richard slipped his arm around her shoulders. He's right, you know, he murmured. She leaned against him, eyes glistening in the twilight. About what? That I already belong to you. The wind off Lake Michigan carried the scent of spring and the promise of something permanent. She turned, kissed him softly, and whispered, Then don't ever forget it. The city lights shimmered behind them, reflected on the calm water. For once, there were no more secrets, no more battles to fight, only the steady rhythm of love that had survived everything meant to destroy it. And as they stood there hand in hand, Sarah realized something she had never dared to before. Sometimes the wrong number, the wrong message, the wrong beginning leads you exactly where you were always meant to be.